I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled, walked out the front door, and took $320 million. In client contracts with me, they thought giving my brother the title would silence me. They forgot I built this empire, and I know exactly where the cracks are. My name is Madeline Prescott Maddie to anyone who matters. At 39, I'd spent 14 years of my life at Willow & Ashford, the Chicago-based financial consulting firm that bore my mother's maiden name alongside my father's family name. I'd climbed from junior analyst to senior strategic advisor, sacrificing weekends, relationships, and even the possibility of a family of my own. The corner office on the 47th floor with its panoramic view of Lake Michigan had been my second home, often my only home, as I guided the company through the 2008 financial crisis, the European debt crisis of 2011, and three major mergers that transformed us from a regional player to a national powerhouse. The Wednesday morning that changed everything began like any other. I arrived at 6:30 a.m., a full hour before most of the executive team. The early mornings were my sanctuary time to think without interruption, to review strategies without the constant ping of messages and calls. I'd prepared my presentation for the quarterly executive meeting meticulously, knowing this was finally my moment. Partnership announcements were traditionally made at these meetings, and after 14 years, my time had come. The boardroom filled gradually. My father, Raymond Prescott, CEO and founder, nodded at me from the head of the table. My younger brother Ethan slid into his seat across from me, offering his usual boyish grin that had charmed clients and coworkers alike since he joined the firm 8 years ago. At 35, he'd risen quickly, too quickly. Many whispered to Director of Client Relations. The remaining partners and executives filed in, carrying coffee cups and tablets. "Let's begin with some exciting news," my father announced once everyone was seated. His eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled, looking around the room. "After careful consideration and unanimous agreement from the board, I'm pleased to announce our newest partner." This was it, my moment. I straightened almost imperceptibly in my chair. "Please join me in congratulating my son, Ethan Prescott, on his promotion to partner." The room erupted in applause. I felt the blood drain from my face. But 14 years of high-stakes negotiations had taught me how to maintain composure under any circumstances. I smiled the same smile I'd used when closing the Delaney acquisition despite their CFO's last-minute demands. I stood when others stood. I clapped when others clapped. When the noise died down, I walked over to Ethan, extending my hand. "Congratulations, little brother," I said, my voice steady and warm. "I hope you remember the clients you've made angry." His smile faltered for just a second, enough for me to know he caught my meaning. Those clients had been mine before he'd temporarily taken over during my 3-month European assignment. Clients who'd called me directly afterward, frustrated by his handling of their accounts. Clients whose trust I'd rebuilt, one careful conversation at a time. The meeting continued. I delivered my presentation on Q2 projections with precision and insight. I answered questions thoughtfully. I contributed to discussions about upcoming initiatives. No one would have guessed that inside. I was already gone. When the meeting ended at 11:45, I gathered my things and walked out with the others. I took the elevator down to the lobby, nodded at the security guard who'd greeted me every morning for 14 years, and stepped out into the Chicago summer heat. I didn't look back at the gleaming glass tower that housed Willow & Ashford. I simply hailed a cab and went home. My penthouse apartment felt foreign in the middle of a workday. I kicked off my Louboutins, hung my tailored blazer over a dining chair, and opened my laptop. After a moment's consideration, I logged into LinkedIn and typed 4 words: exploring new opportunities. I hit post, closed the laptop, and poured myself a glass of the Macallan 25. I'd been saving for a special occasion. By 2 p.m., my phone had begun to buzz with increasing frequency. By 4 p.m., I had 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 38 emails. I ignored them all, except one. The text from Dominic Farr, CEO of Corvex Shipping, our largest client at $78 million annually, contained a single word: lunch. I responded equally succinctly: Tomorrow, 1 p.m., Gibson's. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Gibson's Steakhouse was Chicago's power lunch epicenter where deals were made, alliances formed, and occasionally, careers ended. I arrived at 12:50 dressed in a crimson Armani suit that had always been my battle armor. Dominic was already there, nursing a scotch at a corner table that offered both privacy and a view of the entrance. Maddie. He stood as I approached, his 6'4" frame towering even in the spacious restaurant. He kissed my cheek with European familiarity, a holdover from his years running Corvex's Mediterranean operations. You look ready for war. Just lunch, Dom. I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. How's Marissa? Asking when you'll come for dinner again. She misses your conversations about Renaissance art. The small talk continued through appetizers. We both knew why we were here. But there was a rhythm to these discussions, a dance that couldn't be rushed. Finally, as our steaks arrived, Dominic placed a slim folder beside my plate. No pitch needed, just terms. I glanced through the document while cutting my filet. Double my current compensation. Founding equity. Operational autonomy. The freedom to build something without a glass ceiling installed by my own family. You're confident the clients will follow? I asked, taking a sip of Bordeaux. They're waiting for your call. He replied simply. Why now, Dom? Why back me? He set down his fork and knife, looking at me directly. Because in 14 years, you've never once put your interests above your clients. Because when that shipping crisis hit us in Singapore, you were on a plane within 3 hours. Because you understand this business isn't about quarterly reports, it's about trust. He paused, swirling his whiskey. And because your brother cost us $1.2 million with that botched negotiation in Dubai last year, and you fixed it without ever mentioning it was his fault. I signed the preliminary agreement before dessert arrived. The next morning, I called Carla Monroe. We'd met at Northwestern Law 20 years ago, remained friends despite diverging career paths, and she now specialized in high-level financial contract disputes. I wondered when I'd hear from you, she said instead of hello. LinkedIn is buzzing. I need to know where I stand legally. Send me your employment contract. I'll call you back in 2 hours. She called back in 90 minutes. You're remarkably unrestrained for someone at your level, she began. No non-compete clause, standard confidentiality, but nothing beyond industry norms. The most interesting thing is what's missing. Explain. Your father never had you sign the partnership track agreement that most firms require. It typically includes extensive restrictions on client solicitation, either an oversight or he never intended me to make partner. I finished. There's more, Carla continued. The firm bylaws explicitly state that partnership candidates must be interviewed by all current partners and receive a unanimous vote. From what you told me, that didn't happen. No, it was presented as a done deal. Then they violated their own governance procedures, which potentially invalidates the confidentiality requirements regarding internal operations, especially if you can demonstrate the decision involved discriminatory practices. I thanked her and hung up, already formulating my next steps. Over the following week, I began the painstaking process of organizing 14 years of documentation, client contracts, strategy documents, email threads, meeting minutes, everything I legally had access to as part of my normal job functions. I wasn't stealing proprietary information, I was simply ensuring I understood exactly what I had built. That's when I found it. 6 months ago, while I was in London restructuring Miratech's European operations, someone had submitted revised terms to their board. The document bore my signature, except I had never signed it. The restructuring strategy was mine, but the execution timeline had been accelerated by nearly 2 months, creating impossible implementation deadlines. I pulled up other documents from the same period, 3 more instances of my apparent signature on documents I'd never seen, all related to high-value clients, all containing subtle but significant changes to strategies I'd developed, all signed while I was verifiably out of the country. It took me only 20 minutes of comparison to confirm Ethan had forged my signature. He'd taken my carefully crafted strategies, made hasty modifications to claim some input, and then signed my name to push them through without the scrutiny a new signature would invite. I created a new email account under a generic name and sent copies of the forged documents to Willow and Ashford's internal legal compliance team, with a simple note. These signatures appear inconsistent. You may want to investigate before the clients discover the discrepancy. Then I waited. The first domino fell 2 days later when Richard Kwan, CFO of Miratech, called me directly. Maddie, what the hell is happening at W&A? I just got a call from some junior partner stumbling through apologies about document irregularities and revised implementation timelines. They're trying to push everything back by 3 months. Richard, I'm no longer with Willow and Ashford, I replied calmly. Since when? Since they decided my brother deserved the partnership I earned. Silence hung on the line for a moment. Where are you going? He finally asked. I'm establishing a new strategic advisory firm with Dominic Farr. We launch officially next month. Another pause. Send me the paperwork. Miratech goes where you go. By the end of the week, 3 more major clients had made similar calls. None of them mentioned the forgeries. The legal team was clearly trying to handle that internally. But the sudden scramble to reassign accounts and explain my absence had created exactly the uncertainty I'd anticipated. On Friday afternoon, I received a text from Sarah Chen, a former colleague who'd left W&A 2 years earlier for a competitor. Thought you'd want to see this, she wrote, attaching a screenshot of an internal email accidentally sent company-wide instead of to the executive team. Urgent attached is the current list of clients requesting transition to Madeline Prescott's new venture. Executive response team to convene at 4 p.m. to develop retention strategy. The list included 17 names representing over $240 million in annual revenue. I forwarded the screenshot to Dominic with a single question mark. Ahead of schedule came his reply. Office space secured, legal team assembled, launch whenever you're ready. That weekend, the industry publications began running stories. Nothing specific, just vague references to structural changes and family dynamics at one of Chicago's most established firms. But in the small world of high finance, such whispers carried weight. On Monday, my father finally called. I let it go to voicemail. Madeline, this is unprofessional and beneath you. We need to discuss the situation like adults. Call me back. I didn't. On Tuesday, Ethan called. I let it go to voicemail. Sis, come on. This is getting out of hand. Whatever you're upset about, we can fix it. The clients are asking questions I can't answer. Just call me, please. I didn't. On Wednesday, an invitation arrived in my email. The Northbridge Finance Gala, the industry's most prestigious annual event, wanted me as their keynote speaker. The irony wasn't lost on me. Willow and Ashford was being honored that same night for generational excellence in financial leadership. I accepted immediately. For the next 2 weeks, I worked 18-hour days establishing Prescott Strategic Advisory. Dominic handled the operational aspects while I focused on transition plans for each client. Every strategy was personalized. Every timeline meticulously crafted to ensure no disruption to their businesses. This wasn't about revenge. It was about demonstrating the value they would continue to receive by following me. The night of the gala arrived with perfect dramatic timing. 3 years earlier, I'd have spent hours selecting a dress, having my hair and makeup professionally done, ensuring every detail projected the Willow and Ashford image of traditional, conservative success. Tonight, I chose differently. A sleek white tuxedo with satin lapels, hair pulled back in a severe, elegant knot, bold red lipstick. I didn't look like the dutiful daughter anymore. I looked like a woman who made her own rules. The ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel glittered with Chicago's financial elite. I spotted my father and brother near the front, at Willow and Ashford's premium table. They hadn't seen me yet. Good. The ceremony proceeded with the usual self-congratulatory speeches and awards. I waited backstage, reviewing my notes one final time. I'd written and rewritten this speech a dozen times, weighing every word. It needed to be perfect, devastating without being vindictive, revealing without being unprofessional. And now, our keynote speaker, the MC announced, a woman whose strategic vision has shaped some of the most successful financial restructurings of the past decade. Please welcome Madeline Prescott. The applause was polite but enthusiastic as I took the stage. I saw my father's face register shock, then concern. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady and clear. "Tonight we're celebrating excellence in financial leadership. We're honoring the institutions that shape markets, guide corporations through turbulence, and build legacies that span generations." I paused, looking around the room. "But tonight, I want to tell you a different kind of story. Not about institutions, but about people. Specifically, about a woman who spent 14 years building an empire." The room grew quieter. This woman navigated financial crises that destroyed lesser firms. She personally secured client relationships worth hundreds of millions. She mentored dozens of junior colleagues who went on to leadership positions throughout the industry. She sacrificed personal milestones, worked through pneumonia twice, and once closed a deal from a hospital bed after a car accident. I could see recognition dawning on many faces. She did all this while knowing the corner office with her name on the door was never actually hers. That no matter how many all-nighters she pulled, no matter how many clients praised her work, no matter how much revenue she generated, there was a ceiling she would never break through, not because of her abilities, but because of her chromosomes. I didn't look at my father or brother. I'm not telling this story to ask for sympathy. I'm telling it because this woman finally realized something powerful. She wasn't trapped by that ceiling. She could walk out the door and build something better, something truly hers. I smiled then, making eye contact with Dominic and several clients scattered throughout the room. The moral of this story isn't about resentment or revenge. It's about recognition, recognizing your own worth when others fail too. It's about having the courage to walk away from what's comfortable to create what's right. I let my gaze finally fall on my family's table. And it's about a principle that applies to business as much as it does to personal relationships. Never underestimate the one you quietly depended on. The silence held for 3 heartbeats before the applause began, tentative at first, then building to a thunderous standing ovation. As I walked off stage, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Alexander Reed, CEO of Ariston Equity. "Let's talk exit terms." The aftermath unfolded with the precision of a well-orchestrated symphony. A video clip of Ethan stammering through a CNBC interview about market vision went viral in financial circles, overlaid with cartoon sound effects. 3 more major clients announced their transition to Prescott Strategic Advisory. The industry publications that had whispered about structural changes now boldly reported on the exodus from Willow and Ashford. 1 month after the gala, we officially launched. The office space in the newly completed River Point Tower offered views even more spectacular than my old corner office. The team I'd assembled, a combination of former colleagues who'd followed me and bright new talent, moved with the energetic purpose of people who knew they were building something extraordinary. 3 months later, our first quarterly report showed revenue exceeding Willow and Ashford's by 12%. 6 months later, that gap had widened to 28%. The numbers told a story more eloquent than any speech I could have given. On the 1-year anniversary of that fateful board meeting, I had a printed copy of our latest financial report delivered to my father's home address. On the cover, I wrote just 4 words: "Your legacy, my rules." He never responded. He didn't need to. We both knew who had won. Looking back now, I realized that day in the boardroom wasn't the beginning of my downfall. It was my liberation. For 14 years, I'd been trying to earn acceptance from people who saw me as subordinate by design. No achievement would have ever been enough. No contribution would have ever secured me the place I deserved. Some might call what I did revenge. I call it correction. A market adjustment that assigned proper value where it had been artificially suppressed. The $320 million in client contracts that followed me weren't stolen. They were earned through years of trust and results. Prescott Strategic Advisory continues to grow beyond what Willow and Ashford ever achieved. We've expanded to New York and London. We've pioneered approaches that have become industry standards. We've created a culture where advancement depends on merit, not bloodlines. And me, I finally bought that vacation home in Michigan I'd been putting off. I take weekends off now, most of them, anyway. I've reconnected with friends I'd neglected during those 14 years of single-minded dedication. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at my alma mater's business school graduation. The theme they suggested was breaking barriers. I accepted immediately, already forming the first lines in my mind. Success isn't about avoiding obstacles, it's about recognizing when to climb over them and when to walk away and build your own path. Sometimes, the greatest achievement isn't reaching the top of someone else's mountain, it's creating your own peak, with your own rules and your own measure of what it means to succeed. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I built something better, and that has made all the difference. As for Willow and Ashford, last I heard, they were exploring merger options with a smaller regional firm, the kind of defensive move struggling companies make when they've lost their market position. My father retired last year, citing health concerns. Ethan remains, clinging to his partner title in a diminished firm that barely resembles the powerhouse I helped build. Sometimes I wonder if they understand yet what happened if they recognize that their greatest asset walked out the door that day. Not because I couldn't handle disappointment, but because I finally recognized my true value. I think about that moment in the boardroom, sometimes the expressions on their faces when they thought they'd won. The satisfaction they must have felt in that brief window before everything began to unravel. They thought the story ended with their announcement. They didn't realize it was just the beginning of mine. The Chicago financial world has a new dynasty now, and this one bears my name alone. I didn't need to destroy Willow and Ashford to succeed. Their decline was merely a side effect of my ascension, a natural consequence of undervaluing their most vital asset. The market simply corrected itself. That's the thing about finance that my father never fully grasped in the end. True value always finds its proper level. Sometimes it just needs a little push. I gave them that push the day I walked out. Everything else was simply gravity taking its course. In the quieter moments, when the satisfaction of success gives way to deeper reflection, I sometimes think about the lessons in all of this. Not just for me, but for anyone trapped in systems that fail to recognize their worth. The first lesson is patience. For 14 years, I learned every aspect of the business. I built relationships that transcended company loyalty. I created systems and strategies that became the firm's foundation. When the moment came to walk away, I wasn't just taking my talent, I was taking an infrastructure I had meticulously constructed. The second lesson is documentation. Every success, every client commendation, every profitable strategy, I had records of them all. Not because I planned this outcome, but because I'd always been methodical. That meticulousness became my strongest evidence when clients needed reassurance about following me. The third lesson is timing. Had I stormed out in emotional protest, the narrative would have been about a daughter's tantrum. By maintaining composure, completing my presentations, and walking out quietly, I controlled the story from the beginning. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: sometimes the greatest power comes not from fighting harder within a broken system, but from having the courage to step outside it and create something better. I've been asked if I have regrets. About the family relationships damaged, about the institution diminished, about the years spent trying to earn recognition from people determined not to give it. My answer is always the same. I regret only that I didn't walk away sooner. The true measure of my success isn't the fall of Willow and Ashford. It's in the culture we've built at Prescott Strategic Advisory 1, where quarterly reviews feature honest feedback regardless of seniority, where advancement depends on measurable contribution, where work-life balance isn't just corporate jargon, but practiced policy. Last week, I promoted 2 women to partner, both under 40. Both exceptionally talented. Neither had to wait 14 years. Neither had to wonder if their gender was a factor in the decision. They earned their positions through excellence, and they were recognized accordingly. As I handed them their partnership documents, I remembered standing in that boardroom, hearing my brother's name announced instead of mine. The contrast between that moment and this one crystallized everything I've built. They didn't just receive a title. They received affirmation that in this firm, merit matters, performance matters, innovation matters, and nothing else. That's the legacy I'm building now. Not one defined by a family name, but by values that transcend bloodlines and traditions. Values that recognize excellence wherever it appears. Sometimes transformation requires destruction. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't fighting for a place at someone else's table, but building your own and inviting others to join you. That's what I did when I walked out of Willow and Ashford with $320 million in client contracts following me. I didn't just secure my future, I created an alternative for everyone tired of outdated power structures and arbitrary limitations. The firm continues to thrive beyond my expectations. We've expanded into emerging markets earlier than our competitors. We've developed proprietary analysis tools that give our clients predictive advantages. We've become known for identifying opportunities others miss. None of this would have happened if I'd received that partnership at Willow and Ashford. I would have remained constrained by my father's conservative approach, by the firm's traditional methods, by the constant need to justify innovations to partners resistant to change. Sometimes denial becomes your greatest gift if you have the courage to see it as an opening rather than an ending. On my office wall hangs a simple framed quote: "Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth." It's the first thing I see each morning, and the last thing I glance at before leaving each night. It's a reminder not just for me, but for everyone who works with me. Recognition matters, acknowledgement matters, being seen for your contributions matters. But what matters most is recognizing your own worth, especially when others fail to see it. That's the real story behind how I walked out with $320 million in client contracts. Not that I took something that belonged to others, but that I finally claimed what had always been mine. The clients who followed me didn't do so out of loyalty alone. They did so because they recognized where the true value had always been. They made a business decision based on proven results and established trust. The market simply corrected itself, and I simply showed it the way